Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here with another episode of the K2N vlog. This week, we're gonna have a recap of the local Silver River race that we have here in Florida. This race takes place in Ocala, which is a town a little bit north of Hernando, so it's pretty local for me. I've been participating in this race for close to a decade at this point, and it usually ends up being one of the last races of each year occurring in early December. The Silver River is a spring-fed river waterway here in Florida. So the springs let out water from the aquifer, which is completely clear. So it's a very scenic and fun little river to paddle on. The race has grown in popularity tremendously in the last 3 or 4 years. So there are a lot of participants on the water. There are usually a lot of recreational paddlers on the river at the same time. There are a lot of turns, the current from the river. There are a lot of things going on with this race, which makes it fairly technical. And it's fun approaching a technical race because if you have a good game plan and you prepare properly, you can put forth a good showing. And if you don't do some of these little ideas, then you don't get to showcase a good result, or you may not finish at all. So today I want to use this as a talking point, talking about races in general and going over some of these little details with some more information for you guys. So one of the first things is when you enter into any race, right? One of the goals is that you want to do as best as you can comparatively to the other paddlers in the field, or your goal is to win the race. And so there are times when putting forth an effort to win is different than putting forth your fastest possible time. So in a time trial situation, you're trying to put forth a PR effort, right? You're trying to go as fast as you can for as long as you can. And again, in a racing dynamic, there are many things that are going on that are going to detract from a true time trial effort. All human-powered racing, the best way to approach time trialing is to have even splits or negative splits. Splits would be how long it takes you to go a certain distance and using this as like an average for your overall speed. Even splits is where you start at one pace and end at the same exact pace. Negative splits is where you start at a slower pace than your goal pace and you end much faster than your goal pace, and it averages out to give you a new lifetime performance best. So there may be a large majority of you that are thinking, that's not how I would approach racing. I would go as fast as I can for as long as I can and use that as the first part of my time trial performance. We call these positive splits, and positive splits is one of the worst ways to do any kind of endurance racing. And this is applicable for all racing that goes from about 2 minutes and beyond. So unless you're racing for under that 2-minute threshold, positive split cycles typically do not lead to new world records in track and field, cycling, and any other human-powered sport. And so the reason for this is lactic acid, right? When your body loads up all this lactic acid, it's like putting weights on your body early on in your event, and you have to carry them throughout the event. When you build up that lactic acid and you sustain some level of workload, you don't get to shed that fatigue. You have to carry it. And so this lactic acid can build up in a very quick way. It leads to a tremendous drop-off in performance as you try to sustain that performance. And so when we look at numbers, you can overly build up lactic acid by pushing 10 or 15 seconds per mile beyond your overall goal speed early on. And so that may or may not sound like a lot, right? 10 or 15 seconds can be a lot. But once you get deeper into your sets, as that lactic acid builds up, your ability to go slow has no cap on it. But your ability to go fast has a cap, right? You can't magically go 16 miles per hour on a watercraft because it's just not physically possible. But you can definitely bonk out so hard that you're literally going 1 mile per hour on your craft. And so this presents a major problem, right? When we look at it from a math standpoint, if you build up too much fatigue and you start dropping in speed, it usually does not add up into your favor. So looking at even splits, right? You are going to build up a certain level of lactic acid and then you're going to sustain it the entire way, right? It'll continue to build marginally as you hold this pace over a longer and longer distance, but using a proper game plan allows you to stay consistent and not spike up this fatigue early on. And negative splits is the ultimate way to go through performance racing. The best showcase of this is the 1500 meter or the 1 mile race on an Olympic track. They do 4 laps and each lap is going to get faster and faster and faster. This is a showcase of negative splits. And the reason that this works is you start to backload that fatigue buildup, but by the time it starts to really affect your performance, if you've timed it correctly, you have just crossed the finish line. So now you can actually rest. If you get that buildup in the first 5 minutes, what are you going to do for the next 55 minutes to find reprieve? You have to lose out on performance and you're stuck on the race course. If you lose out on performance and you're done, you've timed it perfectly. So that would be going through a time trial and running through it perfectly, right? But when you do a race, there are now a lot of things that are going on that may force you to build up this fatigue in order to overcome specific situations. The number one is a start in traffic. And I love this one because of the Silver River in particular. So when we start this race, it is a very wide lagoon that we start in, and it forces you to go into a very narrow canal that ultimately leads you into the Silver River. And so all the paddlers are going to line up. Again, the attendance is fairly high on this. And so we're lining up about 10 wide, but only about 3 or 4 wide can make it through this canal. And so now there is a huge incentive to push as hard as you can, as quickly as you can, to get to the front. So if you let a boat that is going to go slower than you over the following 9 miles get in front of you, the Silver River is incredibly narrow with a lot of turns, and it is almost impossible to pass another boat until much further down the race course. So if you don't do it now, you are stuck behind a boat that will ultimately go much slower than you in the long term. You have to spike and dump all of this effort into the beginning just to get away from everybody. And a lot of paddlers use this to their advantage, where they know that they can just run the engine until it explodes, but if you're stuck behind them, now they have a chance to beat you despite being the slower craft. You can't showcase being faster if you can't get around a boat. You're stuck going the same speed as them for an extended period of time. In this situation, spending a lot of energy in the beginning phase is almost mandatory in order to have a good showing in the rest of the course. And this is where racing is so fun, right? Because now you have drafting implications as well, right? So having the ability to sprint, that may put you into a field of paddlers that you can draft with, and it also excludes racers who can't push that hard for that long. In high-level kayak racing, you will see this a lot, where paddlers will make a huge burst of energy to try and drop and separate the group of paddlers that they're in, and then they slow down. Now that the front group is working together, they work less to go pretty fast, and paddlers that got dropped now have to work on their own and go faster to catch up. In a time trial, doing a random 1-minute push is not super effective. If there's not people around you that you are directly racing, it can only negatively impact your overall result. Again, trying to push that lactic acid now puts all this weight on your body, and you have to carry it for longer, right? There's no need and no urgency to do it in a true time trial sense. When on a race course, changing speeds and timing these accelerations based on the environment that you're in can be invaluable to success. Even if you're not faster overall, if you can time your race and time your exertions based on what's going on around you, you can put forth a winning effort. So that goes into the next part of navigating and knowing your course, right? So there's a lot of current on this river. There are a lot of turns as well. Where you place your boat on these turns helps you get out of the current, but there's also now water depth to deal with. Include other paddlers and trying to time accelerations to get around these paddlers in these turns, dealing with obstructions in the water and dealing with the current. You can see how multifaceted it becomes to have a good race. And knowing your course and knowing the water depth and knowing the potential for obstructions, now if you are in a craft with a rudder, you can make a decision on the shape of your rudder in order to showcase a good effort. You have a rudder that is shaped like this, and you know that there's a bunch of weeds, you're gonna catch them, you're gonna drag them, and again, it is going to sap you of energy trying to work harder to go slower than somebody that has a rudder shaped this way and that is shedding their weed. Having a very shallow rudder means that you can go over most obstructions, but if you have a long surf style rudder, that log that is 8 inches is now going to clip the bottom of your rudder. So seeing paddlers hit logs and disable their steering system now puts them from a winning position into the water trying to fix it and back into a losing position based solely on equipment choice. So there's a lot of ideas that go into doing races properly, right? Navigating the people that are around you and trying to use their boats to your advantage to try to leapfrog to the front or to time your race to perfection to try and get over the finish line before somebody else. And it takes a lot of practice. Here in Florida, we have the Florida Competition Paddlers Association, and they have races every 2 weeks starting in January, and it's the same group that puts on the Silver River race. I try to support this organization by hosting some of the races that are on the schedule, but there's races every 2 weeks. So the first spring part of the calendar here in Florida, we'll get 10 races in back to back to back. And comparatively, there are some paddlers that only race once or twice a year, right? And so the ability to go through all of these different situations over and over and over gives you this experience that pays off head to head with somebody that is very inexperienced with dealing with any of these variables. So being a good tactician, having a good plan can showcase your overall performances better than your speed. So something to keep in mind with racing is focusing on being the fastest can be used against you by paddlers that are a little bit more savvy with racing to win. Thank you all so much for checking out the YouTube video today. If you guys have any questions or anything as we go into the holiday season, feel free to leave those in the comment or email me directly. I hope you guys enjoyed the footage, and we'll see you all next week for the next episode of the K2N vlog. All right, everybody, welcome back to Lake Hernando. So before we get into the Silver River race, me and my wife, Thursday before the race, we actually did a time trial out on Lake Hernando together. So spending about 20 strokes here, getting up to speed. You can see we immediately jumped to 7-8 miles an hour, which is a little fast, right? So with the time trial format, you want to stay around what your perceived average speed is going to be. So we only did 7.4 miles an hour. No reason to go to 8 so early on. So it's tough to put that idea into practice, even for me. So I'm still working on trusting the process and trying to stick with even and negative split. But yeah, so we paddle together, make sure we can still go fast before going to the Silver River. So this is the end of the time trial coming in. We have 5 turns on our course here out on Lake Hernando that we do. A better showcase of speed would be something that's straight out and back with less turns, but it's kind of our little benchmark here for navigating courses. But yep, so this will be a time trial. There's nobody else on the water with us, and welcome to the Silver River. So there's a bunch of paddlers out here. So we're launching, there's 2 boat ramps and a little sand entry on the side. We're coming out onto the water. There's so many paddlers, it goes in 3 waves, right? So the first wave is gonna be the sit-down canoe, or sit-down canoe paddlers for the long course. So if you have a single blade, and you're doing the long course, we go in wave 1. Double blade long course goes in the 2nd wave, and I believe the sups and the short coursers go in the 3rd wave. So lining up here, we got all the paddlers prepping for wave 1 here. There's a differential of the kayakers behind us, and we're all about to start. So we're all lined up, pretty wide here, and we're gonna turn the camera, and you are going to see that it is an incredibly narrow opening that we are all jumping out to, right? So there's a huge incentive. You can see that log on the left-hand side. We're 4 wide here, right? And there's no space on my AMA. And there's one more boat that really wants to get in, not hit the logs and stuff. And, I could say all kinds of stuff about people hitting my boat, but it's part of the game. When I hit other people's boats, they get real upset. But when you hit my boat, it's, just par for the course. So we're coming down the race course here. This canal leads into the Silver River. And so our decision here is we have the men's OC2 to our right, and man, do we want to draft it? Do we want to stay behind them? And I'm thinking, man, I think we can jump ahead and go for it. So we end up holding this speed. So we sprint off the line, and I have a feeling the boats are getting fatigued, but I got one more gear in me to keep pushing, to keep pulling ahead. So you can see the end of this canal here where the trees are at, and we make a right turn going upriver to start the course. So at this point, my tail is in front of their AMA, so I'm able to kind of lean to the right side and just kind of close off the door there for us to get our turn at the top here without any issues. But yep, so in wave one, we were the first boat out. So there was a bunch of men's OC2s, marathon canoes, and we were fortunate in being able to hit it and jump ahead. So again, if you don't make it to the end of this canal in an ideal position or near other boats that are faster than you, it takes a long time before you can pass on the race course. So this is down the race course. You can see some of the boats further down behind us. We're about a half mile into the course here. You can see the water, super blue, very scenic. I like to call some of these old rivers here in Florida like Jurassic Park. It's there's no houses here on the Silver River, and there's a lot going on, right? You have the water depth. You can see some of the grass as we go near the sides. The current is strong enough that there is an incentive to not let it beat you up so much. So when you're going upriver, hugging the sides has less current, and taking some of the turns really sharp is also an incentive because there's a little bit less current there. When you're racing with the current pushing you, you want to stay dead center in the deep water and take some of the turns wide so that water can help you. But yeah, here's some of the grass on the edge, and there are some logs that are kind of scattered here and there. So you have to be paying attention and making sure that you don't hit anything. Christina made some good calls for me to turn the boat so I didn't slam the rudder into anything. But yeah, we're just going through, paddling upriver. The current is slowing you down, so the boat doesn't glide quite as well. The OC2 is nice. It holds a little bit more momentum, having two paddlers and a little bit more boat speed than the OC1. I always feel like I go abysmally slow on this course solo, comparatively for myself to flat water, like on the lake. But yeah, going through, it's super scenic, and it's always a joy coming up here. It's just far enough away that I don't make the trip up here that often to paddle on Silver. So we have Ed Joy here. He's famous in the US racing scene here, and he spends his winters here in Florida. So he goes in the second wave, so we have like a 1 to 2 minute head start over him, and we're around mile 3 or 4 when he catches up to us. I'm a nice guy, and I like Ed, right? So we're coming up to this turn, and it's kind of a right-hand turn that's coming up, and I stay on the left side so he has the opportunity to pass us, because there's no reason for me to box him out. And looking back, there was no other kayakers. So, I mean, it's like if he's gonna go out there and have a good showing, I don't want to get in the way. So let him get around me, no big deal. And I was hoping that we could stay on his draft for a little bit longer, but he turned up the effort a little bit and just dropped us immediately. So we just watched him disappear in the distance. But we make a turn, and holy crap, Ed is in the water. And Christina asked him, you know, are you clearing weeds? And he says, no, I broke my rudder. So he ran into a log, and he's in the water trying to bend the shaft back by hand. And further up the course, we see an alligator. So if you're not from Florida and that spooks you a little bit, Christina thinks that he's cute. And near the top turn, some manatees. There was 2, and here's a smaller one that we went around. And then now we're going downriver here, and these are the 2nd and 3rd place boat. You got Flavio and Jason, and then the men's OC2 is here. So at this point, they're about 2 minutes behind us, approximately. This is part of the course that opens up a lot more. But yeah, so Ed Joy, he ended up backing up into the same log that he had ran into, and that actually corrected his rudder, and he finished 3rd in the kayaks behind Flavio and Jason there. But he lost like 5 minutes with that. And so this is the fun part of the race, is going upriver or going downriver and seeing the racers from upriver. There's a boat that ran into mine. They're a little further back. And that boat easily could have gotten in front of us, right? So I know that group is really fast for 400 meters, but beyond that, it's not a group you want to be stuck behind. We have some more OC2s. A lot of OC1s and OC2s came this year. It's a lot of fun seeing the boats out. Marathon canoes are those black ones. They are rudderless. I've talked about that in previous videos. So if you can paddle marathon canoe, it's a little bit more dynamic than the ruddered boats that we're using here. But yep, seeing a bunch of the participants going in the opposite direction. We're still the lead boat at this point. Flavio and Jason passed us at mile 8. So everybody that saw us only saw us in first place, which is always cool. Makes you feel fast. Some more surf skis. Macy in the K2N here, she had a weed rudder, so she caught a bunch of weeds. She should have borrowed my boat, I offered. All right, everybody, so that is the Silver River. Me and Christina averaged 7 miles, or 7 miles an hour over the 9-mile course. You can see all the turns and stuff there at the top. Thank you all so much for checking out the video, and we will see you all next week for the next episode of the K2N blog.